Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek here with Figured Out Baseball. We've got a little bit of a different, unique Figured Out Baseball podcast today. We have J.J. Edwards on the program this morning. He is the hitting coach, infield coach, recruiting coordinator at Wofford College, a Division I school in South Carolina. The bit of the podcast that's different today is instead of just kind of talking about everything overall, we're going to talk very specifically about recruiting. And really get in-depth with some things. So hopefully this will help people that are interested in that topic just to learn, kind of get in the mind of a Division I recruiting coordinator a little bit. But let me give you a bit of background on Coach Edwards before we jump into questions with him. That way, if you have not listened to podcasts before with us, with Coach Edwards, you can get to know him a little bit. Going back to his playing days, he was a 4-year letter winner, 3-year starter, and 2-year team captain at Sacred Heart University, a Division I school in Connecticut. In 2011, the team won the conference championship. In 2011, he was also named first team all-conference, first team all-region. He led the team that year with a .372 batting average, led the team with 80 hits. He's a .340 career Division I hitter, which is still pretty amazing to me. He was conference academic honor roll in 2010 and 11. He got his master's degree actually from Sacred Heart and was also inducted into the High School Hall of Fame, his High School Hall of Fame in 2018. So that was Coach Edwards as a player. In the fall of 2011, he got hired at Wofford. He started out as a volunteer and has been at Wofford ever since. In his time at Wofford, he has coached 19 all-conference position players as well as 3 All-Americans. In 2013, I'll kind of give you a little bit of a year-by-year, some highlights, just so you can kind of see, again, the success that J.J. Edwards has had at Wofford. 2013 was his first season leading the offense after he was promoted to second assistant. He led the nation that year. His team led the nation that year with 163 stolen bases. In 2014, the team went 32-28. That, at the time, was a school record for wins. That was their first winning season at Wofford since 1992. In 2014, they also led the nation in stolen bases and set the school record for walks and fielding percentage that year, both under Coach Edwards' tutelage. In 2015, they went 39-22, a new school record for wins. They went 13-10 in conference play. That was the first time they were over 500 in conference play in Wofford's history. They hit .302 as a team. That was second in the conference and 15th nationally. That year they had a first baseman that led the conference in RBIs with 66. The team led the Southern Conference in doubles that year. They were 18th nationally. They also led the conference in triples. They led the nation that year again with 138 stolen bases. If you haven't noticed it yet, that's going to be a bit of a trend here. In 2016, Coach Edwards was promoted to recruiting coordinator. That year they won 30-plus games for the third straight season. They led the conference that year in stolen bases. They were second in fielding percentage and set a school record for fielding percentage that year with a .972 mark. In 2017, they went 13-11 in conference play, only the second winning season in conference play in Wofford's history, led the conference that year again in stolen bases. 2018, the team went 36-23, the second most wins in school history. They went 15-9 in Southern Conference play. That's the most conference wins in school history, led the conference that year again in doubles and stolen bases. And then 2019, they won 36 games for the second straight year. That's 30 plus wins in 5 of the last 6 seasons. They were the number 2 seed in the conference tournament last year. That's the highest seed ever for Wofford going into the conference tournament. They led the conference offensively in average, on-base percentage, runs, hits, stolen bases, RBIs, and walks. They were 3rd in the country in stolen bases last year, 13th in the country in batting average, 14th in the country in on-base percentage, and also among the top 10 teams in NCAA Division I in stolen bases. They had the least number of caught stealings. They stole 100 bases for the 7th straight season, the longest streak in NCAA Division I. That's all I got on him. This is J.J. Edwards, everybody, the hitting coach, recruiting coordinator, infield coach at Wofford College. How you doing today, J.J.?
I'm all right, Coach Stanek. Happy to be back.
Good, man. It's really good to have you here and just good to touch base with you. If you have not been to the Figured Out Baseball website, Coach Edwards has got quite a few drills on there, quite a few videos on there. He does quite a few infield drills, got also a lot of base running stuff. And as you can tell going through the bio, Wofford has had a ton of success stealing bases through the years, which is probably another podcast in the future is just talking about stolen bases. But today we're going to get into recruiting. And this is something that you and I have talked about a lot. Just, you know, personally, we've spent a lot of time just on the phone talking about it. When I've been on campus with you, we talk about it. Something that I think we both enjoy talking about. What's your experience been like as a recruiting coordinator? I mean, how do you is that something you really enjoy? Something you feel like is necessary that to the team being successful? Just how have you enjoyed being the recruiting coordinator since you got bumped up?
Yeah, it's good start. The best way to describe it is I truly do enjoy it. I think it is my passion in college baseball is the recruiting aspect, phone conversations, keeping up with guys, developing personal relationships. I really enjoy that, and I also think it is a must. It is a must. If you do not continue to recruit, continue to find good players, continue to bring in good people that fit your program, you're not going to really have a lot of success for an extended period of time. You just can't sustain what you want to do. So it's a mixed bag. I truly do enjoy it, and I think it is a must.
As far as the success that you guys have had there recently, and especially on the offensive side, obviously this past year, you guys led the conference in a handful of categories. Is that more recruiting, or is that more coaching? Do you have the right players in place, or are those guys kind of buying into what you're teaching? It's probably a combination, but if you had to pick one or the other, which is more important to you?
I would say if you're putting one, I think the development side is probably a bigger piece for us, as in what we're trying to do. But I don't think the development side goes anywhere without bringing in the right guys that fit your program. As you talked about, all of our stats, we are running a lot. We steal a lot of bases. We get on base a lot of the time. Like, I think you need to bring in the personnel that fits what you develop best and what fits your system the best. And I think that's what took us a little bit longer than when we game planned for at Wofford. Was I think 2012 and 2013 we were going for, hey, who's a good baseball player? These guys are all good baseball players. Let's bring them in. And then you kind of have a hodgepodge of an identity. And since then, and Jason Burke and myself were together back then, who's now the head coach at Lander, we kind of game planned and said, hey, let's kind of go with a little bit more of a niche, so we are developing under the same umbrella of what we like to develop and what we develop the best. So you kind of got to know your strength as a coaching staff, and Coach Todd Indonato's here, and what he does best is developing guys on the base running side and the mental side of that. So you need those guys that your coaching staff can get the most out of. So it's kind of a double-sided thing that you need to bring in the right guys, but at the same time you need to bring in the right guys that you feel like you develop the best and their skills you can develop the best.
So when I recruited, I unfortunately never got to stick around anywhere as long as you've been at Wofford to sort of maybe hone in on what our staff did the best. But I was just looking for the best baseball player, as you guys did at the beginning.
Right.
Do you think it's more difficult or less difficult to try to recruit a specific player? And there are sort of two edges to that question.
Right.
Number one, is it the identification, is that easier than just kind of identifying a good overall baseball player? Secondly, do you find it's more difficult to get kids to say yes because you're recruiting a smaller pool of kids, right?
Correct. So I think it is actually easier on the first one of identifying them, because the funny thing is Seth Cutler-Volz, who is now our pitching coach, came in. He came from UT Martin. He was at VCU before then. And he comes in, he goes, I know exactly what we're here for a year. And he goes, I know exactly what we look for. We look for an athletic guy that can move around the bases, that has a little fast twitch to him, and he just moves easy. He's like, I can find those guys. So you go look at players, you're like, he's a good baseball player, but he doesn't fit for Wofford. So I think the identifying them is easy because you're going through there and you have your Wofford lens, so to speak. Hey, does that look like a normal Wofford guy moving around the bases? We'll say athletic. We look for a lot of athletic guys. Does that fit that? If not, even though he's a good baseball player, we'll just move on because that doesn't fit what we are looking for. And then on the other side of it is, of course it's harder. Of course it's harder because your pool gets shrunk down. With our academic requirements here at Wofford, which are extremely high for the state, one of the better schools in the state in the Southeast, that you are now saying, hey, we need this kind of athleticism, this kind of player with which shrinks your pool, with these academic requirements, shrinks your pool even more. But the good thing is when you find those guys, you just need to inform them, and they need to see on your side of how good of a fit it could be, because you guys are a good match. And that's kind of what we like to present to our recruits is, hey, man, your style of play fits our style of play. Your academics fits our academics. Those are good matches, and that's what you're trying to present to, potential student athletes.
I was almost wondering that if it would, even though you're recruiting a smaller pool of athletes, if it would almost cancel itself out because, I think it's a really big thing to go. I mean, I can imagine as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, whatever, going on a college visit and saying, hey, your style of play fits exactly to what we're going to do. We've shown that we can develop guys that have your tools and again are your style of player. So if you come here, like you're going to get better. I mean, look around and you see how good we are as a team. You're the type of kid that we want. Like, I feel like that probably means a lot to a kid sitting down and thinking, oh, hey, I'd like to get better. I'd like to get better. I'd like to win.
Yeah, Jeff, I think the biggest thing is they come in and they just see themselves. Like, they come and watch us practice and they come and watch us play, and they are sitting there. And it's not just us telling kids that. It is seeing it in different facets. Talking to a travel coach. Oh, you're really athletic and you move well and you like this style of play? Wow, Wofford would be a great school for you with that academic. And then they come up and they look at our stat sheets, because you know what? Everything we do, our resumes are published online. It's called our stat sheet and our records. Like, you look up and I can tell you until I'm blue in the face, hey, man, we do this really well. And then, of course, you're going to pull up. It's 2019. You're going to pull up and look up their stat sheet and be like, Coach Edwards said they did this well. They actually aren't very good at that at all. Or I tell a kid, hey, we run a lot. And then the first thing a kid wants to do is look up our stats and go, oh, they do run a lot. They almost want that confirmation. So I just think it works out because there's just multiple different vantage points and different views of people all kind of, and it's all saying the same thing.
So this is, I'm going to get a little bit off from recruiting a little bit, but when you bring a kid in that has certain tools, so for you guys, you like athletic guys, you like guys that can run, you like guys that can move easily. Are you then trying to develop their other tools when they get there? Just for example, power. You probably don't. You guys, if you're going for that style of player, and not to be insulting, but you guys are Wofford, and you're probably not getting the guy that runs really, really well and has big time power. But are you trying to develop the other tools once they get on campus to try to make them, you guys got to be able to, I mean, do you want to be able to hit some doubles and homers to win as well, in addition to stealing bases?
Correct. So I think that's everybody, and rightfully so, everybody says, and I'm sitting here on this podcast saying, we like guys who move well, who run well, and everybody goes, oh, you guys are little slap guys. Like, you guys are little slap guys. Our whole thing is athletic and explosive. So, of course, we want to develop those guys when they get here and be more than what you think, little punch and Judy, slap, I'm going to bunt on you, we're going to hit the ball the other way, hit the ball on the ground. It is way more than that, because we feel like if you're getting the explosive athlete, they should be able to do a little bit of it all and have a high ceiling. Because that's our whole point of when you're getting that athleticism that you are craving and we are looking for, that they have the ability, who you've coached as well, they have the ability to hit doubles and home runs, and at the same time, if you walk them, they have the ability to steal second base. So it is all together, because, we just look for the guys. We say athleticism, but we think, when you say athleticism, we think high ceilings. Who's got the high ceiling? Because we feel like we can develop their talent to get to that ceiling.
This is a side note, and I'm sitting here laughing on this side of the phone, not at your answer or anything, but if you've never, I was just curious one day of the punch and Judy thing, and if you've never Googled punching, it's punching Judy. If you've never Googled punching Judy, Google it sometime. If you're listening to this podcast, you've never Googled it, then you'll get a kick out of it. And from then on, anytime you hear a player called a punch and Judy type, you'll crack up. Anyway. Okay, so back on recruiting. So you like a guy that's athletic and it's explosive, that moves easily. Can you define what it means to see a guy and say, wow, he's athletic? What does that mean? How do you really define that as a recruiter?
Definitely. I guess now you're going into the eyes of the recruiter. Speed is a big thing for us in that aspect, as we keep talking about that. You will tell a Wofford coach because they will always have a stopwatch in their hand, as most college coaches do, but we will just have it at all times, from what you get down to first with, what you steal second base with, what you go first to third with. Like, we just want as much metrics as possible just to see, because we've all been there, guys who run really good 60s and send it in an email, hey, coach, I run a 6.7, and then you watch them play, and it's not that great. Like, their speed does not translate to the game. Or you get other guys who say they run a 7, and you watch them play, and they go, they move really, really well on the field. They play fast. That's the kind of guy we are looking for, that plays fast, moves around fast. We look at athleticism in the aspect of how they move side to side on ground balls in between innings, the range in their outfield, the range in the outfield. Bottom line is, Coach Stanek, when we go through this, we're looking for as many metrics as possible, playing and not playing. So 60, vertical, shuttles, anything we can dig up, because those are hard numbers and we can pull from that. So I don't know if there's a direct answer of this is what an athletic guy looks like on the field, but we just go through those metrics and through our eyes and saying, hey, which guy is moving the best out there? And that's what we kind of see athletic under. Who's got a little fast twitch? Whose swing looks really, man, that guy has a really good bat speed for 160 pounds. He probably moves pretty well. Like, those are the little things that you will kind of start to pick up on, just recruiting more and seeing it more and more.
When you talk about run times and you try to get times all over the field, one of the things that, to me, being out of the game now, and there are there's new kind of data coming in, just for example, like spin rate. I think most people that are probably listening to this podcast probably have heard spin rate, but like, to me, you can't tell me a spin rate and I'm going to be able to say, like, wow, that's really amazing, or like, yeah, it's kind of average. Like, I don't know what's really good and what's not. Do you guys have times that you sort of in having your mind of, like, do you have times for weird stuff like going first to third, or like stealing second, or scoring from second, you know, on a single? Do you guys have times for weird stuff like that you're looking for?
So stealing second, we would have a time. You're trying to be around a 3.3, 3.35, under a 3, somewhere around there. You're good. All that stuff comes in because people are like, well, coach, I just did a 3.2. I should be getting recruited by Wofford. Your lead comes in and your reaction time comes in, and that is something that you can't quantify with a watch. It's more something you're looking at. So my example is this. If you were on the mound and the pitcher has a 1.9 to the plate, which is really slow, and you're safe at second, you're like, hey, coach, I got the second 3.35, but it took you, a half a second to realize that guy's picked up his leg. That's not a reactionary guy for us. That's not a reactionary guy. The reactionary guy is, if you go back to our videos we put in, the reactionary guy is really good at the tennis ball drop, Coach Stanek, if that makes sense. That's the guy who's really good. If you drop a tennis ball from, I don't know, how far were we that day, 6 yards, 5 yards, and the guys it can bounce, and then they catch it off the first bounce pretty high in the air, like, those are your reactionary guys. It's not ready, set, go. That's not reactionary. That is calculated and thought out. The reactionary guy is, I might just say go out of nowhere, and then the guy with the best jump is reactionary. So we look for that more than anything else. But just stealing second, if you're at a normal 10-foot to 12-foot lead, you're trying to get like a 3.35 down to first base on a ground ball in the infield, or a ground ball you're running through, you're looking under a 4.4. Of course, lefties will be quicker, and then righties, you have the unfortunate disadvantage of being a little bit slower, but we're looking under a 4.4 is a guy that we would call a one runner down the line, a good runner down the line, and then kind of your 4.4 to 4.6, you're like, he's okay. And then over a 4.6, 4.65, you'd say it's not very good down the line. He better hit the ball really far away.
So that's kind of leads into my next question. If for a guy that plays maybe a corner position or even a catcher, are you willing to bend a little bit if he does some other things really well, like if he's got some big-time power, or if he's a catcher who's just a really excellent catch and throw and blocks everything but doesn't quite get to your running standards? Or do you look the other way on that, or are even those guys up to those standards?
So, great question. Get that one all the time on the road. especially travel coaches, say he run. I was like, how does he run? Well, he's a catcher. Our big thing is we don't really slide too much on their times and how they move. So it's really, really tough trying to find catchers for us because you either get a really undersized guy that catches because he's caught his whole life, but he's 155 pounds, and that guy moves well. But then you look at him and say, he's probably not going to hold up through 56 games of a college baseball season. Or you get the other guy who is more filled out, more, physical, I'll say physical, but doesn't run well. So that's really tough for us in that situation. Our whole thing is we do not slide much, but you can never clog our bases or you can never steal a base. If somebody's handing you an opportunity to steal a base in our minds, being slow to the plate, giving us an opportunity to run, that person has to be able to go when they are handing it to us. So you just can't be a base clogger is our term that we'll go through. If they're handing it to you, you have to go, and you have to be safe. It's kind of how we'll shake it down and how our recruiting goes through.
Okay. When you're watching guys play, what are some things that, despite the fact that someone's pretty athletic, they move well, they run pretty well, what are things that you see that will ultimately get a guy crossed off despite the fact that he's got your most coveted tool?
Swinging and missing a lot is a big no for us, especially, how about this, striking out. I don't want to say swing and miss because 3-0, swinging, trying to hit one over the trees, we're good with. Just swinging and missing a lot in travel baseball because you'll get some really good arms in travel baseball and you'll get some not so good arms in travel baseball. So if you're watching a guy and he's striking out a lot, even though he's a great runner, that's kind of a no. That's a big thing. Not playing hard. I know that is not a physical thing that you're looking at and saying, well, his swing's good and all that. But it's somebody who, hits a ground ball to second and runs a 4.9 down the line when he's a 6.7 runner. That does not bode well for us. All those little things. We've had a lot of kids cross off our list on how their interactions are in the dugout with their coaches and how they handle getting out is a big thing. And I know everybody's going to say that, but I have multiple stories of us leaving games early and going to another game in big tournaments because somebody is not handling themselves the way they should. And I understand you're 17 years old, but our thought is if we commit this kid, it's a 4-year decision on both sides. So do we want to coach somebody like that, a character trait like that for 4 years? And the answer is no. And it might be a minor lapse, and that's the only time they've ever done it, but that's all we have to go on. So that's probably the biggest thing. And to be honest, when our head coach, when Todd Interdonato walks out and goes recruiting, and we'll have Coach Bolts and myself kind of find all the guys, and then he goes off and he's putting his stamp on it at the end of the day, like that's what he's looking for more than anything else. We had a catcher, our starting catcher here at Wofford, had his junior summer, had a bunt in the 7th inning with them up by 5 and had a sack bunt. They called on it in summer baseball. People don't really like that. He bunted and then hustled as hard as he possibly could to first base, and the second baseman was like over the bag, and he like made contact with him and actually hurt his knee on the play and got recruited by Wofford because of how hard he was going. And since a summer ball game, bunting, up by a lot late in the game, and he's still going hard, doing things right. Like that was the one that pushed him over is his motor and how he goes about his business, because that's the guy you want to coach for 4 years, as you know as well, Coach Stanek. Those are the guys you want to be around and build your program around and be good influences on your team.
And this is why I really wanted to get into this, because I think that people that are interested in recruiting or someone out there who's trying to get recruited,
right?
I think that they need to hear this kind of thing from someone. They're probably hearing this stuff from their head coach, their high school head coach, or their travel coach, but I think sometimes you hear that from the person in front of you, and it doesn't mean as much as if you hear it from someone that you actually want, to impress. Let's talk about the not playing hard. Actually, let's talk about the dugout interactions first. Where's the line drawn? Do you want to see, guy's got a tough day. He's facing a good arm. He's 0 for 3 with a rollover and 2 strikeouts. He's pretty frustrated with himself coming back to the dugout. Like, what's too much of a reaction where it's going to turn you off and make you want to leave.
Yeah, and that is such a fine line. I think in my mind, it is when you start becoming a bad teammate because of it is the line we draw. Of course, 0 for 3, you're not telling a 17-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, hey, don't be human and don't show me emotion. Like, that's unrealistic. That is unrealistic. That's not what I'm saying. Strike out, you should be okay with it. You should sprint back, put your helmet in. Not what I'm saying. When it starts to affect how people talk to you in the dugout, how people handle you in the dugout, how people have to talk to you in the dugout, of course, man, you want to go be upset, put your helmet in a little more aggressively than normal, put your bat in a little bit more aggressively than normal, fine. If you're throwing a helmet, I'm out. If you are starting to become a bad teammate and kind of that black cloud over your head in the dugout, that's where Wofford College would be out.
Do you mind seeing a guy go out on defense and throw the ball 130 miles an hour across the infield because he's pissed off?
I think it is something that I don't feel like we can write somebody off for that because that just happens. How many guys did we play with, Coach Stanek, that have done that? I bet you I can name 7 in my career that would do that.
How many guys on this phone call did that?
Yeah, not me. Maybe you. Maybe
well, at least one.
Yeah. So I just think that is part of it. But of course, our big thing, and I know this is not recruiting, but that is a big piece of my game in the aspect of the coaching side of hitting. Is, hey, how do you flush stuff? How do you become a good teammate? And I'm on this kick of just reading all these books and meeting with people that are way more intelligent than I am of how to get people back into the right mindset, because the saying is you're never as good as you think you are, but you're never as bad as you think you are either, and it's always somewhere in between that. And I think that always goes there, and I think that's a big part of my game as a hitting coach is you have to make sure your players can always kind of get back to zero and become grounded. So in recruiting, I think a little bit comes to, hey, you can coach that a little bit, but if you see the extremes or a little bit too much is the part you're like, yeah, I can coach that, but that doesn't mean I always want to coach that. And I think that's a big thing as a recruiter that you need to tell yourself is, yeah, I can fix that. And we all think we're good coaches, but you need to tell yourself at some point, well, what if I can't? Do I still want that player? And that's the question you need to answer all the time.
I just want to ask you some kind of specific things, kind of staying on this, this line of questioning. A guy is consistently the last or one of the last ones out of the dugout every half inning, has a slow to medium jog out to his position and kind of throws gets like 2 balls to throw between innings and is kind of nonchalanting them. Is that a big deal to you? Do you care about that? Is that something you totally look the way on, or does that become a big deal to you at some point?
Great one. I think there is something to say about that, but I'm looking at more of how does he go about his whole game. Out of the whole example you gave me, the only thing that really kind of gets under my skin is the lack of him getting throws in. I'm fine with him trying to slow down the game. If that's what he's doing, I had a bad at bat, I'm going to slow down the game. If it is, hey, man, I actually didn't even hit this inning and I'm the last guy out and I wasn't on deck or in the hole, that would irritate me. That would be a no. But the aspect of not getting your throws in, not getting better, not trying to, continuing to develop through a game, that would be the stuff that would kind of irk me the most as a recruiting guy. So I'm going to say that. This is my, in the sand, black and white, this is my answer. It is, if somebody does it the other way and is hustling out there getting all the throws in, everybody will see that as a positive. When you do it the other way, it will be 50-50 if people are okay with that. So you shouldn't do it just because people have more opinions on the other side than the trying hard side.
Let me just ask you if this is a fair assessment. I've given a recruiting talk before where I tried to just explain to parents that basically when I went out to recruit and I was looking for something a little bit different than you, and probably every coach looks for something a little bit different than the other.
Correct.
But I basically said there are 2 columns. There's a plus column and a minus column, and everything you do is go into one column or the other. And there are some pluses and minuses that are far bigger than the others and some that are very small. visually looking, if a guy throws 94, that is a big, big plus in the plus column. If
Correct.
a guy kind of, he's not a distraction, but he's not a real hustler. He hits a ground ball to short and runs like 80% down the line. That might be a smaller minus, but it's a minus. And at the end of the day, kind of what I would tell people is that you've got to have a lot more pluses. You got to have a lot more stuff in the plus column and a lot more to look at in the plus column than minus column to get yourself recruited. And sometimes when you have that really big plus, like a 94-mile-an-hour fastball, people will overlook other things. But, if you have a bunch of small pluses, you got to have a lot of them. Is that kind of a fair way to look at it, or am I?
Could not agree with that more. Could not agree with it. There's just not a lot of vanilla things in recruiting, in recruiters' eyes. It's one or the other. It's not, it's, no, I like that, I don't like that. That's a plus, that's a minus. That's a great way to put it, Jeff. Great way to put it.
So let's look at, maybe a player who is, listening to this, and he's kind of an average to above average player all around the field. And, he might look at the recruiting scene like, I'm 5'11", and I'm next to this 6'4" shortstop. I'm like 82 across the infield, and I'm next to this guy who's 87. But I think I'm a Division I player. How can that – what does a kid like that – well, two-part question. Can a player like that do the small things that you're not going to see at a showcase? So they just the everyday playing the game the right way. Can that borderline Division I player turn himself into a no doubt Division I player by doing all the little things right? And second question is what exactly does he need to do to elevate himself in your eyes? Let's start with the first part of the question.
Okay.
And I want you to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Does a kid who is a borderline Division I player, you end up seeing him on purpose or by accident a bunch of times, and he's always doing everything that J.J. Edwards likes?
Right.
All the things you want to see, he's doing that. Is he going to turn himself into a recruit for you, or is he still going to be passed because he doesn't quite do things to a high enough level?
There is probably 3 kids in my recruiting time that you are describing that ended up being good players at Wofford College for doing that. Man, I've seen this travel team XYZ here, and every time I play it, that guy is hustling, has really good at-bats, plays solid defense, and does everything right. So the first part is, yes, 100%, that guy can turn himself into a D1 player. It has to line up perfectly is something to say. Like, they need that. Wofford College would need that fit, need that guy, need that position, which is sometimes it's not. That's why I said there's only 3 of them in my 9 years here, because it's not an every year thing. Hey, we can use that guy. I think he can be a good guy for us. He's got to continue to do everything right in that aspect. So, yes, you can definitely make it. The second part of that is, think about it as you were saying pluses, minuses. We use the term credit a lot here. With that guy, he doesn't have a good credit balance to begin with. He doesn't have a good foundation of credit to begin with. So every time he sees them, every time we see that kid, he has to continue to gain credit and keep building his credit score up and getting more and getting more and getting more. A bad game for that kid could be the end of it. Could be the end of it. Where other kids, as you're talking about, hey, he's 6'3", shortstop who throws 90 across the infield, has a really good swing, has all these tools, he starts with credit, and he has to lose it. He has to lose it. So that's kind of the best way to describe that. So the undersized underdog can definitely play at the Division I level. He just has to always perform. And it's unfair. It is unfair because he doesn't have the physical attributes somebody else does, but he just always has to hit on all of those things to get more credit and get more credit and get more credit. We can see that kid play 5 times, and if he doesn't play good, 1 or 2 of them, he might be gone. Where the other kid who runs well, has a good arm, has a good swing, has some bat speed, who might not be as much of a gamer to say, he's starting with more credit because he has all the tools everybody is looking for, and he might only need to hit 2 out of the 5 games, where the other kid needs to hit 4 out of the 5 games. That's kind of the difference in that situation. And I know it is not some parents who have the undersized guy, who I was, is you're sitting there saying, well, that's not fair. Like, my kid's a better baseball player. I understand that, but we are not seeing them have 25 games like you are sitting there watching your kid. We are looking at a short in a lens that is short, and you have to make your calls off of that. It might be, our rule is we try to see you have 12 at bats. It's the minimum we want to see you have, but you could go, 8 for 12 and those are all your hits the whole summer, but that's where we're going on. So that's the crapshoot of recruiting, but I guess that's the best way I'd answer that question.
I really, really like the way you put that with the credit. Either you start with it or you don't, and then you've either got to gain it or lose it. I really love that, just that way of looking at it and that metaphor. I think it really works. So basically, I mean, if someone's listening to this who thinks they are that type of player, the sort of the underdog type player, they may not be a Wofford guy because it's only happened a couple times in your history there, that, with your whole team. But he can probably be a Division I guy somewhere, but he may not just be able to be as picky as he'd like to be.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
There's got to be the right hit somewhere.
Correct. You have to, and we had the example, we keep having this conversation. We had a third baseman who graduated 2 years ago, started all 4 years, and he played at our field 3 weekends in a row for tournaments, and came to our prospect camp in August and played well all 3 of those tournaments and really well at our camp, and he needed all of them to get recruited by Wofford.
And ended up having a really good career.
Really good career. 4-year starter. Did we think he was going to be that? No. We thought he was going to be somebody who kind of pushed other guys on the team, maybe sticking at second base and, play his junior and senior year, and ended up starting for 4 years. But in the recruiting process, Jeff, he needed 3 tournaments in a camp and could not mess up in either of them. And even after the good camp, it was like a divided office. It was a divided office. So with those undersized guys, I'm a D1 guy. You might be a D1 guy. You might be a D1 guy playing Division III baseball, and there's a lot of those guys. And there's a lot of Division III guys playing Division I baseball. It's just part of recruiting. But that's kind of how it shakes out, because the people who look the part get the first crack at it, and it pains me to say that, or runs it or throws it hard enough. Like the guys with the tools, people get the first crack at it, and then it kind of filters down from there.
Yeah, recruiting is definitely not fair. It's definitely not. There's a lot of luck involved, and
I've been on many recruiting panels where parents ask me, "Hey, like you're sitting at the game, and my kid has a double, but your back's to him. Your back's to him watching another game. Like that's not fair to my kid." I go, "It's not fair to your kid, but I mean at the same time, if you walked up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and say, "Hey, my kid's about to hit," he would probably not get recruited by us anyway. So it's just kind of a dice roll at that point.
Let me ask you, as you're going out and watching, it's pretty evident that especially for Wofford, and again, we're not talking about a Power 5 school. We're talking about a school that's got to do a lot of things right to win 30-plus games every year, and you guys have done that, and it seems to be pretty important to you that you find guys that know how to play the game. They're not just like, quote-unquote, showcase guys that go out, hit the ball a long way, and run a good 60. They've got to do more than that. What do you think is the most underdeveloped part of baseball at the high school and, like, the travel age level that as you're going out watching games, you're watching a lot of sophomores and juniors and seniors play? What's the most underdeveloped part of the game right now?
And this is I'm going to just say this. The game of baseball is the most underdeveloped aspect to it. When you are watching and I will explain this, of course. When you are watching travel baseball, the game that we play in college is not the game they are playing in high school. In high school, not as much, but in travel baseball, it is not the same game. It is not the same game. It is a individual game in travel baseball because everybody is trying to get recruited and find their destination, and those travel programs are based on that. And those are the good teams, the teams people go to are the teams that, hey, my kid's going to get exposure and he's going to get a chance to go, schools are going to see him and he's going to get a chance to go play in college. Like that's what they're based on. In college, it is more of a team game and more of an understanding that we are here for everybody in the program and the team, where in high school it is, hey man, do what you need, or in travel ball, do what you need to do because we need you to go to the next level. So there's not much of a, hey, he's going to hold the base runner. There's picks to second base. It's first and second, no outs. This is the time we're actually going to bunt. It is just, no, what's going to showcase you the best and what's going to get you out there the best is the thing that when they get to college, that you almost have to re-teach them the game and how we play it at this level, because it's not, hey, this is all for exposure. This is all now about winning.
Do you wish that it was different, or is it okay like it is? Because you've got to sort of teach your brand anyway.
I wish it was more. I wish it was a tick more of a team game. And some recruiters, and I was actually having a conversation with my buddy who's an assistant at Holy Cross right before this phone conversation, and I was sitting there saying how I enjoy watching guys walk in travel baseball. And you're going to sit there and say, I hated it because you walk. And I wasn't saying like a 4-pitch walk, but a competitive walk, I am 100% fine with. I am 100% fine with it, because that's a realistic thing in college baseball. You're going to have to battle, and you're going to have to walk. A 3-2 pitch that's somewhat close, you're going to have to let go, and you're going to have to walk to first base. That's realistic. And I just think in showcase baseball, 3-1, this is yours, get your good swing off, and all of a sudden their approach and pitch selection goes away. So, like, those are the little things that I like to see going forward, and stuff that, but as you recruited forever, Coach, you would say, I hated that. Like, that was the worst, but I truly enjoy it. Like, I truly enjoy it if that kid has a competitive walk, because I was like, okay, that's good pitch selection. Like, that's a big plus for me, so to say.
So at Moorhead, when I was recruiting there, the other assistant, Adam Brown, who's now the recruiting coordinator at USC Upstate, right down the road from you, he and I were trying to I guess, identify some things that we would look for that other people weren't looking for. We were trying to do like the Oakland A's type thing, like the Moneyball thing. We were trying to find our own Moneyball, like what can we evaluate that other people aren't evaluating? What can we value that other people aren't valuing? And you said about walking, one of the things that we decided that we wanted to look for in a hitter was basically a guy that could, what we would call navigate an at-bat, meaning as the count changed in and out of their favor, they were able to adjust to that, and in a 3-1 count, they were able to lay off a pitch on the black that they didn't like, and they were able to pull the trigger on a pitch that caught a lot of the white that they were able to hammer, and a guy that was okay taking a walk because he didn't get a pitch that he could really handle, or he fouled a couple balls off and worked a walk. Like, those were pluses to us, because we wanted guys that were able to get on base, and at least from our perspective, and the guy, from our limited coaching experience at that time, I was still pretty young, but we felt like on base percentage was not something that we could teach. We felt like no matter how many drills we did with the guy that was a free swinger, he was always going to be a free swinger, and it was a recruitable skill for a guy to be able to walk. And that's not necessarily the question I was going for, but is that something that you've seen as well? Because you like to see a guy walk. Is that a tool that you recruit, number one? And number two, do you think that's something that you can develop on campus?
So my whole thing is, it is something we look for a lot now, on base percentage, how many times they walk compared to how many times they strike out. Because my running joke is the guy on our team who's the biggest free swinger on our team gets labeled as my arch nemesis every single year. Like, I just I'll be like, yeah, you're my arch nemesis. You're the guy I need to work at and get developed the other way. I think it is a developmental thing, but I don't think it goes from, you don't go from one is a free swinger and 10 is, the best money ball who's just going to see all the pitches in the world. Like, I don't think you go from 1 to a 10, but you can jump up something. It can be developed, but I don't think you will change everything you were doing all the way through, if that makes sense. Like, I think you can trend to the direction you want to go, but I don't think it is. This guy came as a free swinger, and now he is seeing more pitches, and he is now the Bobby Abreu of seeing pitches. And for Wofford Terriers, I think it is. I think you can only go up a couple ticks. But we practice that, Stanek, probably more than anything else, of the amount of pitches you see, and you're not all of our rounds are just swing rounds. We do a lot of pitch rounds of, hey, this is just going to be 5 pitches, not 5 swings, and we're going to hold you accountable to the strike zone. So it's a big thing for us. And we have a junior right now on our team that came in as a free swinger, and he's probably went from a 2 on the free swinger scale, and he's probably sitting at a 6 almost going to probably push an 8 by the end of the year on just how much better he's gotten over it. When he came in, he used to strike out probably 20 strikeouts to 10 walks, and then last year he was 15 strikeouts and 30 walks. So he's definitely going the way we need to go. And I would still classify him as a free swinger, but it's just night and day from where he's been, and it still has night and day to go.
Awesome. A couple more questions, JJ, then I'll let you run. Is it a recruiter overall, just in what you deal with on a year-to-year basis, what's the most frustrating part of your job recruiting in 2019, 2020? What's the frustrating part of the job for you, if there is one?
God, no, there are. There definitely are. I would say the number one thing that gets under my skin, and I would say it's a big consensus, is parents getting involved in the situation at times they should not get involved in the recruiting situation. So I think that is it's probably one of my bigger pet peeves. I don't know if that is the biggest one, but parents jumping in situations where I don't feel like they should jump in is super frustrating in our standpoint. And there is a time a parent needs to get involved. When it is money, when it's coming on campus, like the parent needs to be involved and they need to be in the recruiting process. But early on, when it is conversations back and forth, emails back and forth, and then the parent kind of slides in, it doesn't go well for me. And I'll give a good example. We were recruiting a kid over the last couple of years. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I would call the kid on the phone and then hang up the phone, 10-minute conversation, and within an hour I'd have an email from his father saying, hey, thanks for talking to our kid, like our son. That's awesome. We look forward to, continuing to call. And then I was like, okay, like first one, and then I talked to him the following week, and then the father followed up with an email as well. And then all of a sudden I talked to the kid, and then the dad emailed saying, hey, we're going to be coming through Spartanburg. Can we visit? And I was like, I am super confused what is going on right now. Like, I'm talking to your son. He can actually ask me. You can actually tell him, can you ask Coach Edwards these questions? Instead, he is not asking the questions, and then the father is jumping on after and then asking questions and like almost saying, hey, I want to get recruited too. And it was one of the biggest turnoffs, and we just stopped talking with this young man. Multiple reasons, but that was a big one. I was like, do we want this? And maybe he's not going to be like this while he's at like it worked out and he went to Wofford. But if he is like this, we don't want that. We don't want that at all. Like that is a conversation. I'm not calling the young man saying, hey, put me on speakerphone. And there is times that we do this, but it's not, hey, put me on speakerphone with your whole family and if they have questions. And I probably do that with everybody on the phone at one point in the recruiting process. But this guy just kept jumping in. And that's just an example. The amount of emails, hey, I am emailing on behalf of my son, blah, 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 I think it's just an automatic, hey, thank you for sending the email. And you want to say one thing, but then you end up going to the coach talk and you saying, thank you for emailing me. Yeah, thank you for emailing me about your kid. Hopefully we get the chance to see him in the near future. Here's our camp link. Like yep. That's kind of how it shakes out. What you really want to say is, please have your son email me. If he is that interested in Wofford College, he should be initiating the process, not you. And you can proofread it and everything. I would never know. Like, I would never know if you wrote this email signing it Johnny Smith rather than, Mr. Smith. Like, I would never know. But you were writing it in your point of view instead of just saying, hey, we are interested in Wofford College. So that is one of the biggest irks I have. And the line I said at a coaching panel a couple years ago about recruiting was, just remember, parents, you are not the exception. Just keep telling yourself that. You are not the exception. That question you are asking early on in the recruiting process is not the exception. It is not the exception. You calling my office and talking on behalf of your kid is not that question is not the exception. Like, just have him. And the ones that drive me crazy, and as I get going on this, which is probably not good,
go ahead,
is the ones that I am talking to the kid weekly, and then the parents still feel like they need to jump in at one point and tell me something. Instead of just being like, hey, I'm actually talking to your kid once a week. Why can't, just ask them to ask me. Like, just ask them to ask me instead of you coming over the top saying, hey, I felt like you should know this about this, or can we do this? And I was like, I'm talking to your kid once a week. You got multiple levels of communication that we can go through here, and you're going with the one that does not sit well with college coaches anyway.
So advice from J.J. Edwards is let your kid have those communications.
Correct.
I mean, these are 16-year-olds you're talking to a lot of times, and maybe a little older, a little younger, but
right.
And I understand that parents, you always got the parent goggles on, but they've really just got to let the kid take command of all this, and obviously have conversations afterward. But your advice, let the kid handle it.
And yeah, 100%. The amount of conversations of kids that came to Wofford College that said, yeah, like during the recruiting process, I used to actually talk to you all the time on speakerphone with my parents in the room. And I was like, really? And I was like, man, I never knew that. They're like, yeah, like they just wanted to know what's going on. I'm actually fine with that. Like, I'm actually fine with that rather than them reaching out to me at another facet and be like, yeah, if they want to know what's going on, as long as we are talking and am I on speakerphone, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say something that is not professional in this situation. I am fine with that. But the side banter conversations with the recruiter and the parent is the one that kind of gets under my skin. And I think, judging on conversations I've had in summer with other coaches, I'm not the only one.
Last question.
All right.
Should be a fun one. Give me J.J. Edwards' key to not missing on a recruit.
Oh my, great question. I've actually had this conversation a lot. Is my biggest thing is there's two ways. Telling yourself I am not a good hitting coach is one of my biggest. Telling myself I am not a good coach, even though I believe I am a good coach, is a big way for me to make sure that I am landing players. So the example is Coach Stanek walks up, he is hitting, and I'm like, I don't know if I like that swing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, JJ, you are not a good hitting coach. Can you fix that? Nope, I can't fix that. Okay, we probably shouldn't recruit him. And I learned that along the way because I used to early on be like, I can fix that. And you know what? There was times that I could fix it, and there's times I couldn't fix it. But if I keep telling myself, no, I can't fix that, is he still a good player? Is where I go back to. Hey, if I can't fix that, how his glove action is he still a good player? Because if he's still a good player, we will recruit you. Is one of my bigger things. And then the other thing is we try to take the givens as much as possible. And that's why athleticism comes into play so much, and defense and speed come into play so much, because we just don't think those are going to go away. We think, yeah, I'm a good runner. We just don't see a lot of guys who are a good runner, who are fast switch, who are super reactionary, 2 years later be like, man, he used to be a 6'5" runner. Now he's a 7'3" runner. Like, you just don't see that much, and that's why we kind of value those so much. Where the other side, and you as a recruiter will know, that the hitting tool is the hardest one to hit on. Pun intended, I guess.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden you're like, man, he's going. So the question we always ask ourselves is, okay, if this guy does not hit, and we'll have this conversation with travel coaches all the time. Hey, coach, this guy's a good hitter. He's going to be a college hitter. What if he's not? No, he's going to hit. What if he's not? Like, what if he stops hitting? Everybody hits until they don't hit is a line that we always say. Everybody hits until they don't hit, and then they don't hit. So if he does not hit, is he still a good player? Do we still have a role for him? Because those mean a lot to us. Okay, he's a really good hitter. Okay, if he doesn't hit here, can he still help our team win? If the answer is yes, we will recruit you.
That's awesome.
So I don't know if those are. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm 100%, because as all recruiting coordinators know, we're not 100%. We're trying to be above the 50% mark, man. We really are. But those are kind of the two things that I tell myself of. One, if you are not a good hitting coach and you are not a good infield coach, would you still take that guy? And if that guy stopped hitting, would he still help your team win? Are the ways that we go about our business of just saying, okay, those guys can help our program. Because if those two things kind of work out and I would still recruit those guys, then we think they're going to be good players for us.
That's really great. And it's funny. I like to typically, if I'm telling a story about myself, I like to tell a lot about how I screwed up. How I screwed some things up. when I first got to Winthrop, I was at a junior college in Iowa, and I went to Winthrop with Mike McGuire, who's now the head coach at USC Upstate.
Yep.
And Joe Hudak, who's a longtime head coach at Winthrop. He's he's a former assistant at Mississippi State. Great guy, great baseball guy. And once I kind of got comfortable there, we were talking about recruiting at one point, and I was a volunteer. I wasn't recruiting, but we were talking about it, and they said something about missing on a player, and I said I don't miss. And they both kind of laughed at me and said, "You haven't been doing this long enough." And then later in my career, I know that there were several players that, and I don't know how you ever overcome this, but the favorite stories are, you go see a guy. There's one. I'll tell you one particular story, and then I'll get it back to you on the podcast. But I went to see this kid pitch, junior college player. I went to see him in the snow, in like the first tournament or first weekend that we were able to go out. I watched this kid snow flurries, throwing to starting pitcher 86 to 90 with a good breaking ball. We recruited him, really easy arm. I thought, boy, this kid could, if he's out of the bullpen. He's mainly a two-pitch guy. If he's out of the bullpen, he could be 90 to 94. He's such an easy arm. Came on campus, JJ never threw a pitch over 87. Was not hurt. Just it's those kind of things are hard. And I kind of look back at anytime I talk about recruiting or about just how difficult it is, there are always stories like that. And it's a really inexact science. But the more you know what you're looking for when you go out, and the more you know really what works and what works for your team, the better off, obviously, you're going to be.
Yeah. I agree. That's everybody sits there and be like, well, he's not a Wofford guy. He's not athletic. He's not a Wofford guy. He doesn't run. And I sit there and I chuckle and I go, they're not really wrong. They're not really wrong. The thing that I think we do well at Wofford is we know who we are at Wofford.
Yeah.
We're just not, we're not sitting there and early on we did, well, he's a good player. He can help us play. And then all of a sudden you look up and you go, we don't really have an identity. We just think we have a lot of people who are good baseball players, and I know you can win with good baseball players, but there's not a style that we want to run with. It's here at Wofford, we run the triple option. That means we don't bring in 6'5" wide receivers, 6'5" wide receivers that get vertical on the field. Because one, why would the kid come here if that's the situation? And two, you probably need more running backs if you're running the triple option. So I think that's kind of a way to go about it is you got to fit to the system you run. And football is a great example of it. Hey, Army, Navy, and Wofford all run the triple option. They recruit to the triple option. They don't recruit to run the spread or the fun and gun. They're not doing that. They are sticking to what they do.
And this could be a whole separate podcast, but just kind of that debate on, do you just recruit the best overall player? Do you recruit the guy for your system? Because you look at college football, but you also look at Major League Baseball, or you look at any level really, are you recruiting, or what kind of player do you want, and what's going to make you successful? I think is just a great debate and probably a whole separate podcast. Yeah. But this has been an outstanding podcast for me. This is a subject I love to talk about, and one of the reasons that Coach Edwards and I decided to do this today, talk about recruiting specifically, is we thought it was something just that a lot of people would like to hear and a lot of people would like to know more about. When I started Figured Out Baseball, that was recruiting was kind of the thing I thought that there really aren't good resources out there for people to understand the college recruiting process, and I'd love to try to get some information out there. And that's kind of what was the seed that got this whole thing started. So this has been an amazing podcast for me, JJ. I've really appreciated everything and the insight and the willingness of college coaches to share what you guys do and how you have success is always something that is, it's amazing to hear, and it's such a good camaraderie among coaches to kind of share their information. It's something I think is amazing. So I appreciate your time and all the info very much today.
Jeff, always a pleasure to come on, Figured Out Baseball, and help out in any aspect or any way possible, man. And hopefully this can be just an annual thing for us. Every December we get on the phone and we rip out a good topic and get a good conversation, because I truly enjoy doing these.
I would love that. This is J.J. Edwards, everybody. He's the hitting coach, recruiting coordinator at Wofford College. You can check out a bunch of his videos at figureitoutbaseball.com. It's a free resource for you to learn really anything you want to know inside the game. And that's another thing I think that we need to make an annual thing. J.J. is getting some more videos from you. You're great on camera and did a great job with the videos, and I just enjoyed coming down to Spartanburg. But once again, it's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast today. I wish you all the best and everything coming up for you guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.